Everybody, welcome back to the Book of Brianna, a podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brianna Whiteside, and I want to welcome you to the month of May. I think that God is going to do some amazing, amazing things this month, and I wanted to kind of share this platform with someone who you all know, you've seen her before. You know, she was once a watcher, once a viewer, turned friend, turned what are we co-laborers right now? And I want y'all to welcome Nikki. Hey, Nikki.
Hi.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast this
Thank
month.
you for having me.
Yeah, girl. So I wanted to kind of do this girl time, right? I want to talk about the war on women. We see a lot of things going on in the culture regarding women, even in the kingdom regarding women. And I just kind of feel like it's important for believers to enter the chat, right? For the girls to enter the chat. Because sometimes I think that our silence kind of puts us in agreement with certain things. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think from almost, gosh, maybe the beginning of of time where we as women have been, kind of like growing up in the culture. We've been taught to be seen, not heard. And that has played out in our lives, all of our lives, right? So we have been instructed to be seen, but you don't really have a voice. Your voice doesn't really have power. What you say really doesn't matter. And I think this is a great conversation for us to kind of dive into. Why does that happen? What can we do about it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because I was never taught to be seen and not heard.
Mm. Oh, that's
And I don't know if
interesting.
that's like a geographical thing, right?
Hmm.
I hear a lot of women in the South say, this is how they were socialized to be seen and not heard. But growing up in the Midwest, I was never really silenced. I was actually the one who was heard in a lot of ways. Now I know my personality is introverted. I don't talk a whole lot, but I've never been taught that. Like, were you taught?
Was as a Midwesterner myself, yes.
Wow.
Growing up, that was my grandmother's whole thing. Like,
Okay.
children are to be seen, not heard. And I think that might depend on the dynamic too. Like, my grandmother was a very big part of my life, who was from the South. And that was one of her things. Like, me and my cousins, like, children are to be seen, not heard. And I was one of those always that talk back, very inquisitive, like, but why? And what do you mean? And it's children
Yeah.
supposed to be seen, not heard, that kind of thing. So my voice
Yeah.
was silenced a lot growing up.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating because, my grandmother, she died when I was in the fourth grade, and we used to live in this family house. So it was literally like easily 3, 4 generations living in one house we shouldn't have been doing it. Fire hazard. Okay.
Right.
But my grandma, she was from Paducah, Kentucky. But she was very outspoken. It's like she was outspoken, but she was also the one drinking beers and smoking cigarettes all the time. You know what I mean? And so like she was this strong character. And then y'all know my mom, y'all seen her before. She's the baby of the family. So she was Peter Popoff. You know what I'm saying? So she had all the mouth. She really didn't play that with me. It wasn't no talking back. However, I don't think I was ever silenced. But I think that is a problem, right? That is a problem because once you start to socialize girls to be seen and not heard, they become in some way silent women. Or if they're not silent, they become the opposite in a lot of ways. And so I think that there is a balance. But one thing that really sparked this topic that I was really thinking about, because I've been spending a lot more time on TikTok. And I don't know why. I don't really post like that on TikTok. And I just like scroll and then I end up down a rabbit hole. Like I haven't really found out how to use TikTok. So I just see what TikTok is suggesting to me, right? But child, there is this thing that I started to notice, and I kind of talked about it, earlier in the year or maybe even last year on the podcast about women in dating. And how in the culture, and I don't think this is believers, but these are the girls in the streets and the girls who are the loudest. And as a result of them being the loudest, they're the ones who are influencing some of the dating culture. And as a person who is in the dating culture, I'm kind of like, you know what I mean? Feeling the results or the reverberations of some of the girls, what they think. And so I think we have what I've seen is that some of the girls are like, well, if he can't do this, if he can't buy you this, if he don't do woo woo woo, then he broke. He and his soft guy. Well, now there's I'll text you about the soft guy era, which is largely a response to the women. But I see the girls is really, I don't know, like it seems like they're turning up in masculinity in some type of way, but it seems like it's a response to, it's like a trauma response. Right. And so now I'm kind of getting concerned because I don't think it's so much for my generation, but the generations that we're socializing under us, that is my concern.
I think it's all about this feminist movement. Like, I can do the same thing that you can do, and I can work the same jobs that you can work, and it's we've gotten past women, I don't want to say knowing their role, but essentially, like, there are some things that you shouldn't just want to do. You can know how to do it, but maybe you shouldn't just do it. Just let the man do what he's gonna do. You know, let the man be a man and you be a woman. I know you and I have talked about this before, the passenger princess life. Like, I don't want to always drive. I don't always want to do this or do that. Like, let a man do that. And I think the strength is knowing that, yes, you can, but you don't have to.
Don't have to.
And I think a lot of the younger generations are living in this delulu fantasy. I saw one that said something similar, like, if my man breaks up with me, if my boyfriend breaks up with me, he has to pay me kind of like restitution, or kind of like he still got to pay my bills. I'm sorry, say what now? Like, make that make sense for me, because that doesn't make sense at all. He still got to pay my phone bill, he still got to give me money to go shopping and an allowance. Like, make it make sense, sis, because that ain't it.
And it's so delulu, right? I think that is what that is the term that we should use in describing like some of the mentality that the younger people are taking on, but they are playing a role, right? And not maybe realizing that they're playing a role, but there is no way that a believer, or you, even if you're a baby Christian or have been, as you Christian adjacent, there's no way that you can honestly and with integrity show up in the world like that and have those expectations that are just very transactional, right? And, you know, as I said, like, I don't think it's just a war on my generation, the millennials. This is about who's coming up. And I don't agree with it, right? I don't agree with it in relationships, but as you said, like, you know, feeling like just because you can do it, don't mean you have to always do it. And it's so funny, it reminded me, because I'm quick to tell God, I'm a lady. All of these weights that you are putting on me, I am a lady, just in case you forgot.
Right. Let me remind you.
Let me remind you that I'm a female. And you don't say anything. And I know, you know, that's that fine line between calling and staying in femininity. There's a very fine line, because generally a lot of the things that I do are hard things, right? And they build you up in this way. And so I'm wondering, like, what do you think about callings and womanhood? Or should I say callings and femininity? That's tricky, ain't it?
It is very tricky, because like you said, it is a fine line. But I think callings and womanhood, I do believe that a lot of women are not operating in their fullest potential, purpose, or calling because of fear and because of their voice being silenced for so long. How do I look if I am out here, you know, doing what God has purposed me to do and called me to do? What is cousin so-and-so going to say? How is my mom going to react? What are my friends going to say? Because they've never seen me in this light, because you've kind of dumbed yourself down for so long. And so when you come out and you operate in the limitations of other people, you end up re-silencing yourself. So if you put yourself out there and you say what God has told you to say, or you step into the business or the calling or whatever it is, now you're afraid because someone shared their opinion of what they saw, and now you're operating off of an opinion versus what God has told you to do and say and be and all the other things.
And then you end up in disobedience, right?
And delayed obedience is still disobedience.
I think that's so true. I think back to the early stages of me trying to find my confidence as a woman and also as like this outlier person, right? I'm not in the circle. I've always been alongside the circle. And I remember, can't believe this, going to ask, I was in this group, and I think I shared this before on the podcast, but I was in this group and, I don't know nothing about church stuff or religion stuff for real. Like, I really
Right.
don't know. I wasn't in it. I was around it, but I wasn't in it. And so I remember when I started to sense that God was taking me on this identity journey to discover who I was. And I was in this group and I literally went to them and asked, hey, do you give me the blessing to go out here and basically do what God has called me to do? And luckily, that was the first and last time I did that. But luckily, they were like, oh, yeah, of course, blah, blah, blah. But I always think, like, what if
What
it
if
was
they didn't?
no?
Right, right.
Would I have done and be where I am now? I don't know. I can only speculate. Eventually, I probably would have done it, but that their words would have played in my mind over and over again, like, no, God didn't give his blessing. And so that's why I think it's so important for you, whether you're a woman in ministry, whether you're a wife, whether you are an employee, an employer, to know what God is calling you to do for yourself, and also not to cower to
100%.
other people's perceptions, because ultimately people can only advise you to the level that they have gone. So what happens when God may call you to do something that no one else has done, and then you go ask someone, hey, do you think I could do this? And they're like, no.
And then the cycle repeats itself because now their voice is silenced again, and now they're thinking they're in delulu. Like, maybe I didn't hear God because this person said, and I hold this person in such high esteem. So that means I'm tripping. Maybe I didn't hear God. So now we're questioning everything.
Yeah. And I don't think the questions ever go away, right? So there are the questions that happen when you go seek other people's opinion. I'm not talking about wise counsel, right? I think there is a difference. You should seek wise counsel, but also at the end of the day, know that you're committed to doing what God has called you and purposed you to do.
100%.
And I think that there's still that questioning, even when you're doing it, that doesn't go away. But a lot of people stop when there's questioning instead of pressing forward, knowing that you're always going to have a question. Like when you're following God, you're following him into a question. And I think as women, sometimes we see, specifically in the faith, I guess we can say that we see it's male dominant, right? This is a male dominant or a platform, male platform in a dominant way. But also we should also understand that God called women to do what they were supposed to do, right? And I honestly just think that sometimes we drop the ball because of what has been, and because we don't have the courage to maybe go after what could be for us.
You even hear, like, in the Bible, like, it's such a male dominated, like all the chapters, especially New Testament, written by men, all of that. And you think about Lydia, who was the seller of the purple cloth. You think about the Priscillas, the Esthers, the Ruths, like all of these people that played a pivotal role in our history. Like, glean from that, glean from those chapters, and understand, like, you do have a calling and God does have a need for you, but it's up to you to say yes. It's up to you to make that decision. And I think a lot of times we vacillate between, like, again, am I hearing God? Should I go with what this person has said, or my spiritual this and that told me to do X, Y? It's a little much. It's a little much.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, so you're at this place in your life where you're this business owner, we see you doing all the things. Like, how did you get out of your own way?
God, quite honestly. That is the best way that I could describe that, because it was a sense of knowing, I didn't have all the pieces, and even since stepping into business ownership, I have changed several times just following the path. You said you follow God into a question. it's the short root of that is quest. So you're on this quest all the time, knowing and pulling out the things that don't belong, and knowing where God is taking you and where He's leading you. So you're on this quest, on this path, but sometimes the path may veer right, sometimes the path may veer left.
Sometimes the path is ghetto.
Baby, listen, okay? Listen.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was following God. And did I always get it right? Absolutely not. Am I still getting it right? No, because that's life, right? And so, but he's so gracious to guide you back onto the path that you need to be on. And so yeah, it was just God. It was listening to what he had to say. There were no other business owners in my family, and I am the first. And I had to decide whether I wanted I wanted that on my life or not. And ultimately, yeah, okay, let's see. Because I have little cousins, I have little people up under me that I'm role modeling for. People that I never even thought, like I remember one of my cousins came to me, 2022, we were at my other cousin's funeral, and she was like, I just want you to know, like, I look up to you. I watch your social medias, and you're the reason why I wanted to go into business. So she started with cosmetology, and now she's a realtor. And like, she's always talking to me about how much I've inspired her. So I realized that other people are looking at me, whether family or not. And I understand that the calling upon my life is not necessarily for me, but it's for other people. And I think when you get out of this, it's all about me mode, and realize God has a bigger purpose. Like, there are other people that you're supposed to affect. There's other people that you're supposed to help, bless, whatever, fill in the blank. Then you kind of operate a little bit differently.
Yeah, but I think that sounds good. Right.
In theory,
because you like, get out your own way. This ain't about you. And I'm like, but I feel it. You know 100%. What I'm saying? Like, yeah, that's cute, girl. I appreciate you. But I am feeling the brunt end of this, right? I am feeling the getting a taste slapped out of my mouth. I am the one who's having these sleepless nights. Like, I don't even think I want to do this because I'm paying a price that ain't for me. You know what I mean? And I say that because I know so many people feel that way. Women specifically. We're not even talking about men. We're talking about women who carry a lot of the weights in the world silently. Some of them are unsung heroes. But I think that we have to understand that we have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit for. So even if we take other people out of it, like, I think that culture, society, the enemy, whomever we're going to blame, has done a masterful job at convincing women that we are weak, incapable, insignificant. God doesn't care about us. We're only here for one reason. All of these things, and it's very problematic. You know what I mean? But I know that it's so easy to subconsciously believe it. Because at some point, I can say in my own life, I've believed a lie at some point about who I was as a woman, my value, if I was going to be seen as significant, my voice, even like, even still to this day, sometimes the enemy be on me. Because like on me, because you all know me, right? You all see me, but I'm still very much out of view of a lot of things. And so he like, girl, you really think?
Right.
You really think? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I'm gonna try. Like, we're gonna figure it out. And
so in this case, what do you do to pull yourself back out of that situation? Because you do know who you are, you do know what God has said about you and what you've been called to do. How do you combat the enemy in your ear trying to knock the taste out of your mouth?
Sometimes I give in for a minute. I ain't even gonna lie to you. Sometimes, because the voice only, or the thoughts only become amplified if I'm already doubting, right? If I already have these questions, and then he kicks in overdrive.
That's good.
And so I think that I am more, and have always been more of a doer rather than a processor of certain things. And so when I say that, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what I'm gonna do. I don't. I may have a few minutes and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna try it. And so I think that because I don't get in my head, when it pertains to what I'm supposed to do. I get in my head in other categories. But because I don't get in my head about what I'm called to do, what I'm supposed to do, even now, there is no plan B to what I'm doing. So we're going to have to run the play. Plan A is the only play.
That's it. Yeah.
And so the way I live my life is like, either you're going to swim or swim. You're going to have to make this thing work. And you're going to have to keep working it until it works. Right. And it's so funny because, you know, people may see what I do. I'm like, oh my God, it's so amazing. And I'm just like, that's, you know, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Glamorous. And it's not easy at all. It's very difficult. But even going back to you asking me what I do, I don't do anything but do. I don't think, I just do. I am in action, and then I try to allow my feelings to catch up. But I already know, like, you miss a lot of the opportunities if you just don't try, right?
Now, have you always been that way? Have you always been a swim person? Or did you have to build up
I've
to
never
that?
had a plan B. And this could be how God built me. I've never, my walk has always been sure in a lot of ways. And I'm not talking about my walk with God. I'm talking about my path of life. It's always been sure. So y'all know I shared I wanted to be a teacher in second grade. This is what I knew. This is what I became, right? And so there's always been this surety and the sureness within myself. And even now, when I knew I had to resign and do all the things that I had to do, it was like, I am sure. Shook, yes. Sure,
Right.
yes, right? So two things can be true at the same time. And so I don't think I've ever been a scary person, or I will say this, the thing that terrifies most people don't terrify me.
Gotcha.
I don't have a lot of fears in my life. I may have like two, but I don't have a lot of them. And so I think that is just by the grace of God that, you know, he wired me to be like, all right, let's try it. I'm like the person who, you know, some people are like, ready, aim, fire. I'm ready, fire, aim.
Right.
Like, I'm just
we go fire and figure out what it hits later. Yeah.
Even going down to you being on this podcast episode, right? There was not a lot of thought. I was at the gym. I had a thought. I text you. What do you think about this? Let's schedule this, right? That's it. I don't think much of it until we got to do it, right? So, yeah, I don't know what that is. It's probably just God, because he probably knows if I let this girl, she's already in her head a lot. And intellectuals are. Academics, we're all in our heads thinking. I don't have time to be in my head thinking about my purpose, what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have time for that because I won't do it. So I would tell anyone who, you know, when God is talking to you, you know when you're supposed to do something, and you know when you have an opportunity. I think the lie that we believed is that things will always come back around. They won't. Some opportunities are time sensitive, and we have to look at the sons of Issachar. You know, we like to quote, oh, they knew what the time, they knew what Israel ought to do. That lets you know that the strategy was season specific.
Right.
So they could not miss this season's strategy and say, oh, we could do that tomorrow. No, next season. It doesn't work like that, right? And so I'm like, okay, we're going to seize every opportunity. Some of them going to hit, some of them not. But you can never say Brianna Whiteside didn't try. And albeit imperfectly. And that is what I heard you say at one point in this podcast. Like, yeah, you still shouldn't be doing the things not perfectly. But who said that it had to be perfectly?
Right.
We see people online do whatever they want to do.
However they want to do it.
However they want to do it. And they're becoming the millionaires of the world. I ain't telling y'all go do something illegal or immoral, none of that. I'm just saying.
Right.
The perception you may have of what you need to do, what God has called you to do as women is not right. It may be a flawed perception.
That's what I was just about to say. There's this misconception that when you're working for God or you're operating in your purpose and your calling, it has to be perfect because God is perfect. But when you started your job, you still had to go through a part of training, right? OTJ, on the job training, you had to learn how to do the job that you have, regardless of whether your schooling prepared you or not. You still had to, once you got out in the field to do whatever it is you were called to do, you still had to learn. And that is the same thing with God. When you walk in your purpose and your calling, you get a lot of OTJ. A lot.
It's all on the job training.
The whole thing is on the job training, baby, okay? Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I also
So
think, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the women who don't have mentors, the women who don't have, dare I say, spiritual parents, the people who don't have, these connections. And I know you don't have these connections, neither do I. But we're still out here doing what we feel and we believe that God is calling us to do, though it's hard and we may feel like, oh my God, it would be easier if I had this thing. Um, can you talk a bit about that, like, and talk about like how you're still able to do that, even if you don't have all of the things or all of the people? Like, yeah.
That's a wow. That's a great question. How am I able to? Thankfully, God has blessed me with a wonderful man in my life. And so my husband, my man, he has definitely been able to kind of lift a lot of the weight. And so we do a lot of business work together.
Okay.
And he will take his part, I will take my part. But for those that don't have that, honestly, it's just God. Like, that's all I could say. Like, it was a lot of things that I kind of tapped into that I didn't know how to do per se, like how to do it the way that everybody else was doing it. And I just did things in my own way. I'm an only child for those that don't know. And so I've always kind of been out here on the lily pad by myself, just trying to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things that I do, I've just figured it out, or God has supernaturally downloaded certain things on me to just know how to do it. And
Yeah.
instinctively, I just know. It's a lot of, as an introvert myself, it's a lot of pulling on my friends. My very small circle, I'll tap into a lot to find out like either information or just bounce ideas off of, or even just strategy. We have the beautiful strategists over here that can put together something super quick for you. So I could say one thing and she'd be like, oh, here you go, do this. Like, oh, okay, that was so easy. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of that, like you were saying, like you are not the type of person that's always in your mind. It's a lot of us that when we are doing certain things, especially if it's business related or calling related, because we have this I want to be perfect and I need to make this thing perfect, we are in our heads too much, and we're coming up with situations and scenarios that haven't even taken place, and we kind of end up talking ourselves out of things. And so what I would say, if you do have a small intimate circle that you trust, bounce some ideas off of them. But ultimately you have to obey what God has said. Either you're going to obey him or you're going to obey him.
By any means necessary.
Yeah,
And I
100%.
always think like, because specifically majority of my audience are women. Like some of the
Hmm.
uncles being there, but the aunties, are really
Same. Yeah.
especially on my social media, it's the aunties. And that's who, that is who I talk to, or that is who I gear my content towards. But the kingdom teaching is for anybody who wants to
Hmm.
know, right? So when I'm teaching, I'm casting a wide net. When I am influencing or encouraging, I'm talking to women,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because I understand what it's like to be a woman. I may not understand all of the intricacies of everyone's journey, but I do have the basic understanding and foundational understanding of womanhood and some of the things that stop us. And, I think that it's so easy to critique a position you've never been in, right?
Hmm.
Because we see people doing whatever, 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 but we not doing what we supposed to do. So it's so easy to critique. Well, they should have did it. Well, what are you doing?
Right, right,
Because
right.
maybe their voices wouldn't shine so or sound so loud if you entered into the chat and did what God told you to do.
Hmm.
Right. And
Hmm.
so I think that sometimes as women, and we may feel, oh my God, I have so many things I have to do, and you do. But God knew that when he told you to do what he told you to do.
Right, right.
And so ultimately what I'm getting at is that sometimes we get in our own way, and then we are put in positions where we have to pray for a miracle when we didn't need a miracle. We
Hmm.
just needed to obey and take the first step of obedience.
Hmm.
And I'm kind of very dogmatic on that point, right? I'm inflexible on that point, because I think that every time we don't do what we're supposed to do, we're losing another generation.
Hmm.
And people in the world, we love to critique them, but they're doing what they're supposed to do. they're influencing and bringing people into their kingdom. While we are up in here just, I was gonna say crime spitting and farting, but
which we are. And being disobedient, and yeah.
And we kind of sometimes just put it all on prayer.
Or I'm just waiting on God.
But so waiting on him what? Like
right.
What time he's supposed to pick you up?
Right.
Like
because he gave you the instructions. You just have not done your part. So what are you waiting on him to do? Because he's not going to do it for you. And I think there's this misconception that he's just going to come down off his throne and just do the thing for you. Oh. And then you reap the benefits.
And Jesus is not getting back on that cross.
Where they do that at?
He's already done his part. The rest is
right.
I remember, yeah, this is like the harsh reality that I had to come into when I was studying the kingdom, and I said it recently, like, this on you. It's not really on God. All of this, your experience, all of these things are on you. And when we start to realize that we carry a lot of weight on how we live our lives, and you know what I'm saying? Like the spotlight is on us. What are you going to do? Because they've done their parts and the Holy Spirit is doing his part. So when I came to the revelation and the realization, like, oh no, if you don't have it, Brianna, it's because you didn't want to have it. You didn't make time for it to happen for you. Just as like people saying they want a husband and they not doing nothing. You're not going on.
Because Jesus is their husband.
Don't ever say that. It's so cringe to me when people say Jesus is my husband. Is he keeping you warm at night? You rolling over in the cold spot just like me.
Rubbing your feet together.
Rubbing my feet together. Just empty. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that, dare I say this, and this may be controversial, sometimes Jesus is not enough. I have to say that, because this is a relationship this way. Then why would he give us partnerships this way if he was just going to be enough to help us fulfill our destiny in the world? That's controversial to say, and I know that. But I want to ask you, do you still have these voids that are human voids? You need relationship. You may not want a man. Okay, cool. That's not what we're talking about specifically. You may need a friend. So you know that song, long as I got King Jesus, I don't need nobody else. That's a lie.
Wasn't that Shirley Caesar?
Was it Vicky one? I don't know who it was.
Listen, or it might have been Vicky. So what you're saying to me kind of sticks out. There was a revelation that God had gave me a while ago about in the Bible where it talks about it's not good for man to be alone. So he created a helpmate. The way he broke that down for me was like, this particular scripture was talking about marriage, but in life in general, you need each other. I have built and I have created relational beings. You need to have relationships with each other. Yes. So yes, you need the husband and wife component, but there are some things that you can do or that you need to do with the help of a friend, with the help of a sister in Christ, with the help of, whomever, your brother, your sister, your physical brother and sister or whatever. But we are relational beings. And so the fact of if I ain't got King Jesus, I don't need nobody else, or whatever the saying was, or the fact that you feel like you don't need your friends and that you could do this by yourself is delulu. Yeah. 100% delulu.
I remember trying to spiritually bypass, and I think this is what believers do a lot. We spiritually bypass everything. And I remember it was a season, I was going through something. I was trying to spiritually bypass him, Lord, and talking to him. And he's just like, you need to go talk to somebody else. And I'm like, no, because
this is me and you, Jesus.
Trying to be hyper spiritual, right? Go talk to the Lord. Go spend time in his presence. And after I got out of his presence, the command was still go
talk to somebody else.
To them. And that is why I can boldly say, like, no, yeah, you got Jesus. And it's going to be a great love affair. But sometimes he's not enough for certain things that you need. You need a person to help pull you out of certain things, to help give you access to certain things, right? So I think that, we have to be mature in this thing. Like, yes, Christ is the foundation, but understand that we have to learn how to master relationships, especially as women. Sometimes we can be so catty
That leads me to my question, because I was just about to ask you, how has your relate? Because I know you said that your most of your audience is aunties. Same with me over here. So has it always been that way in your life? Did you always have a lot of relationships when you did with women?
No, I've never had a lot of relationships with women. I used to get beat up because I was cute in school. Like I was never really liked because I came from private school. And then
Same.
I went to public school and I was this cute girl with this really big long hair. And, I lived in the hood, but I wasn't of the hood.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the girls didn't like me. I always had a small group of friends, female friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the people who were in my inner circle have always been solid people. And I'm fine with that, right? Because I'm also not the friend who's gonna talk to you every day. I'm not gonna do it. And I may just pick up a conversation in a text from last week.
And does 100%.
And act
And
like
does.
there was no pause.
Like you didn't drop the conversation.
Like I
Like,
didn't
oh,
drop the
okay.
conversation.
Right,
But I am
right.
the one who's gonna show up. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So all of
Mm-hmm.
my friends and female friends know that. And it was so funny because one of me and my homegirls, we hadn't spoken in 3 months and we talked one day for 7 hours. I mean,
Mm.
7. And we all just going around the world and like, okay, girl, I'll catch you next quarter.
Right.
Like, because now we're grown, right? And
Mm-hmm.
also I am doing different things than my friends. So the dynamics of the friendships are naturally shifting just by the very nature of I'm coming out of my career.
Mm-hmm.
So in this season, I am more silent. I know y'all may see me coming up on on the internet and stuff like that, but I am silent majority of the time. I'm not really talking to a lot of people. I'm not really doing a lot of things because I know that my attention is very important right now, right? Into what I'm transitioning to this quarter, transitioning in this quarter. And so I'm not really as vocal with my friends, but they don't think nothing of it because they know I am very careful about what happens when I'm in transition because I know that I've had a history of transitioning dangerously.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm more mature, more aware. My friends know, everyone who are in the inner circle, they know what's going on, how I'm moving. I try to communicate as best as possible, but I've never had a big circle of friends, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me the other day, yeah, do you go on girls trips? And I'm like, I would never really say I'm going on no girls trip. Like I don't really know what that is. Like sometimes, and they're generally one-on-ones, unless there's a
Mm-hmm.
special occasion where we all have to come together for a specific reason, but that's always mixed company. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, okay, well, tell me about the last one. I'm like, let me just be clear. Majority of my friends are married women, and I value their marriage and I don't want to betray the trust of their husbands. And so if we go on a girls trip, we're doing married woman stuff. Period. Even though I'm single, they may be like, girl, you seen him to kind of, get me
Mm-hmm.
married. But we're never going to go on a trip and disrespect their marriage.
Right.
Ever.
100%.
Ever. And so, because I stand on principle. Because I believe, and I think y'all need to stay together. Y'all don't want to be out here with me. Like, this ain't what you want to do. It's not what you want to do. But anyway, by just standing on principle in that way, I'm thinking about womanhood. I'm thinking about wife. Like, no, I'm a believer, and I try to live my life as closely to this, to what Christ has modeled and said we should do as possible. And so, ain't no wilding out on no girl trip. And if you do wild out, you put me in an uncompromising position, and now we have to reevaluate our friendship.
Right. And I feel like at this big age of ours,
Yeah.
like, come on, we got to be way more mature than that. Like, vacation, like girls' trips are great with the right people. Nobody's out here trying to be ratchet. Nobody's out here trying to, do the things that some of these girlies do.
Break up their home.
Yeah. That's some other things that they probably need to work on. But in reference to what you were saying though, so me growing up, I was very much the what the old saints would call the fast girl.
Oh
So I had
no, you
nothing
fast.
but guy friends, nothing. I did not like girls. I did not like talking to
Huh.
them. I thought they were very catty. I thought that this very crab in the barrel dynamic, like you can't go higher than me. I have to pull you down kind of thing. Very much clicky. I don't do cliques, you know, and I didn't like that. And back when I was growing up, Guess was very popular, the brand Guess. And so all the girls had the matching, you know, bright red Guess sets. And if you didn't
Yes.
have that with the matching belt and this
Yeah.
and that, like you were not a part of the in crowd.
Oh
And
man.
so growing up, I was just like, women are crazy, like they're ghetto. I don't like how did I get, was I born in the wrong body?
Yeah.
How did I get here?
Yeah.
I had one female friend, and she was my best friend, and we still talk 30 years later. We're still really good friends. She was my best friend. She grew up a house apart from me, and we kind of just grew up together. But for the most part, no, I didn't like women. And I thought it was very strange that God put me in a ministry slash business that only dealt with women.
So when did you start to like, well, that was going to be like a weird question. Like, when did you start to like women? No, no pun intended. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Um, Gosh, it had to have probably been first year of college, maybe.
Okay.
And yes, I was about 17. I graduated high school when I was 17, and I immediately went to school later that year. So I was about 17, getting ready to turn 18. And I met a girl, and she was just like really cool, just really like a dope personality and stuff. And I was like, you know, like I have this thing with females. And she was like, not every female is like that. And I was like,
Shoot a
but
guess.
most of y'all are. But like she was a believer, and we just kind of had just really good conversation, and she just kind of really showed me a different perspective. And I think that's what I needed. I needed to shift my perspective. I grew up in a house full of women, and we're all born around the end of the year, and so we always like bumped heads. And so I'm not a horoscope person, but like we always bumped heads. And so um it was just a lot that was influencing my decision, and she helped me to see a different perspective. And I started to be like, okay, well, you know, maybe I can have one girlfriend, maybe two, you know, not too many. And the older I got, just the more of those misconceptions just kind of broke off of me. I had to end up at a church that I was going to. I was doing ministry, and the ministry was called Never Knew a Father's Love. And I didn't grow up with my father, and so it was kind of like a support group type of situation that I had to lead, and coming to learn different stories about these women or these people in general, men and women, that struggled with not having their father in their lives. It allowed me to see this was a lot of the reason why I felt the way that I felt and why I gravitated to men, because it was something that was missing. And it was nothing in a sexual way, but it was more of, I just, men are cool. I can kick it with them. We can talk sports. We can do, you know, like all the things that men typically do. And so, yeah, that's just how I kind of broke that. And now here we are with a majority aunties ministry.
Majority aunties ministry. That's a real
Mm-hmm.
place. That is a real place. Yeah, because women are important to other women,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of girls when I was growing up used to say like I don't like women, and I'm just like you
Mm-hmm.
are a whole woman.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Even though I didn't have a lot of female friends or someone was hating
Mm-hmm.
on me, things like that, like I always knew that these are important group of people. Now you do gotta vet them. And you do have to be around like-minded women. But I think that women, sometimes we're the hardest on each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think sometimes we let each other slide too much.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you
Mm-hmm.
need to be around mature and like-minded people so they could pull your coattail like, oh,
Right. Right.
you may be tripping.
Yeah.
You may be tripping.
But
But
you
they
probably shouldn't go down that road.
probably shouldn't want to do that. You probably shouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
that. Don't send that
Mm-hmm.
text. Don't
Mm-hmm.
go over there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that thing.
Please don't go over there.
Don't go over there. You went, no, girl.
Right.
Text lady, did you go?
Uh-huh.
I went, girl. I went. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna talk about it. No, but this has been a great discussion. This has been a great discussion. I want to thank you for being a guest today.
Thank
In
you
the
for
month of
having me.
May. Y'all, women's relationships are important. Get around some women, some like-minded women, some believers. I even have friends who are unbelievers too. Or when I say no, let me not say they're unbelievers. I have friends who teeter. That's what I'll say. I'll have
The
friends.
lukewarm ones.
Yeah, they lukewarm sometimes. But you know what? And that's a conversation for another day. Y'all, this has been a great discussion. If you have liked or learned something here, I want to encourage you to like the video, share the podcast, let us know your thoughts in the description or in the comments, shall I say, and I'll talk to you soon in another installment of the Book of Brianna. Bye.